AskReddit, NSFW, sex ed teachers of Reddit. What is the most awkward or cringe-worthy question you've had to answer in your class? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell button to never miss any of our future videos. Not a sex ed teacher, but a 7th grade classroom teacher. I had one boy ask me, "Mr. XXXX, you know boobs, right?" as he cupped his hands in front of his chest. I nodded. "I'm sorry, I know this is a bad word," he said, "but I don't know any other way to say it. Are boobs full of cum?" I'm a teacher in year 6, 10 and 11-year-olds. In the UK, it's the first year that children really learn and talk about sex in school. We had arrived at the actual sexual intercourse lesson where we focus on the science of conception. One boy out his hand up and said that there were, of course, sounding worldly wise, ways of having sex without getting pregnant. I nodded approvingly as I thought we were going to start talking about contraception. "Yes," he says, "you can stick your penis between a woman's breasts and then come on her chest." I suppose he isn't wrong. Hard to get pregnant like that. Took me by surprise though. Bruh, we started in year 3. Always changing, always growing or something like that. By year 6 we were made to watch a lady give birth and some poor lad fainted. Looking back, that primary school was shit all around though, so not surprised. No need to mention the incident. During our sex education in the early 90s, which amounted to 1 hour of dividing the boys and girls of each grade, taking them into their respective classrooms, and going over very broad topics, we were allowed to anonymously ask additional questions we had by writing them on a flashcard and passing them to the front. I asked what would happen if a boy peed inside a girl. I watched as my flashcard was silently read by the teacher, then unceremoniously thrown away without being answered. To this day, I still don't know. Madonna has entered the chat. I teach 11 to 13-year-olds. All subjects. I was explaining the functions of spontaneous erection to a group of 40 12-year-old boys. As you develop, and even into your adulthood, you will sometimes develop an erection at times that seem inappropriate. Just know that it's normal, and while it can be embarrassing, it does not necessarily mean that you are sexually attracted to anything or anyone at that time. Boy in the front row with his hand up. "I have an erection right now. Is that normal?" Edit. Thanks for my first gold anonymous redditor. I am casual as all hell, so I have no idea what any of it means, but I appreciate the gesture. Either he was ignorantly telling the truth or the funniest kid out of a group of 40. We had a girl in our class ask our science teacher, "When did she lose her virginity?" She answered, "When I first had sex." Excellent answer. Not a teacher, but we had noticards and wrote questions anonymously. One asked if both partners have long pubes. Will they get tangled? How do you untangle them? And honestly, I never thought of that. The sound of opening Velcro. Oh dear God. A nun taught us sex ed. One of the lads asks her if when you stick it in, do you just hold it there or do you wiggle it or what? She turned red and informed him it was an inappropriate question. So what's the real answer? Asking for a friend. Stick it in and maintain eye contact for as long as possible. Once asked the question to a group of year 9 students, "What do you do if you want to have sex and you can't find a condom?" Student 1, male: "Surely you can find something in your house. Maybe cling film." Student 2, female: "Yeah, or maybe tinfoil." Ducking tinfoil, like a little suit of armor. A kid in my class asked what is the stuff that girls orgasm out if males is sperm. Teacher said that girls don't ejaculate. The kid responded, "No they do, I've seen it on the internet." Yes, the age of the internet is keeping sex ed honest. My daughter is a high school health teacher. When I told her there's a Reddit question directed at her, she gave me these. "Why do I feel happy in my pants when I see a girl? Is it true that a guy's balls will explode if he doesn't come? Most common question. Can you get pregnant from anal sex?" Behold, the vast spectrum of knowledge and ignorance among middle schoolers. Her students are high schoolers, but yet, she told me she has a list somewhere of those kinds of questions. I'm not a teacher, but in 8th grade we finally had a health class at my private Christian junior high. The teacher was determined to do a correct and thorough job despite the obvious constraints put on her by the schools, and the parents paying the tuition. Of course, morals ideology. She got to the last day. So far so good. We learned all the proper names for stuff, how it works, though it was an abstinence-only curriculum of course, so no methods of birth control were officially discussed. But she answered questions and we got correct info about what condoms do and do not offer in terms of protection and general confirmation that there are also other forms of birth control. Anyhow, here's where it went sideways. Last day, she says we can anonymously submit written questions to a box and she will answer them all truthfully. We work through the box until she gets to one that makes her turn red. She's not embarrassed but she sees the danger. She tells us she's going to answer this question after the bell rings. Anyone who wants to know what the question is can stay and she'll read the question and answer it. Honestly, I was kind of embarrassed at the whole subject. I left when the bell rang. But it didn't matter. The whole school knew about it 20 seconds after she answered the question because the guys literally burst out of the room shouting the answer. The question, is it okay to masturbate? She said it was natural. She was fired that day. TLDR. Health teacher at a religious school says masturbation is natural. Gets fired immediately. Not a teacher, but this happened years ago in my old elementary school and I heard about it. Teacher, remember girls, it is always okay to say no to sex. Girl, can I even say no to my daddy? He went to jail. I am not a teacher. Back in grade school, one of my classmates asked the teacher during the sex education lessons about why his dad put fingers in his butthole, then made him cry, but still loves him. The student disappeared the next day. I only realized it years later. Wait, so, the dad put the fingers in his own butthole. The kid was molested by his father. I'm sorry, but what the duck? I asked the teacher how the sperm got into a woman, and if she had to drink it from a cup to get pregnant. I have an anecdote for this. Back when I was a senior in high school, there was a big fuss happening in the school because apparently, there were 2 freshman students that decided to be a little naughty during class while the lights were out for a movie or something. Now, the method of naughtiness was either a good ole handy, or a proper BJ, depending on who you heard the story from. Normally, no one would have known about this even happening, because apparently no one in the class actually saw it happen. The whole school only found out after the girl on the giving end of this special favor told her mother she thought she was pregnant because she swallowed lil dudes. Mom naturally freaked out and went straight to the principal, and it somehow got around to the rest of the school after that. I always assumed that a student aide in the office heard the story and spread it around the school. The story going around school coincided perfectly with that year's ebooks being circulated, so within a couple hours everyone in the school knew exactly who it was. One of my favorite moments from my high school days. We had health as part of our PE class, and they always got the PE teachers to teach it. And of course one week of it was sex ed. We had this dumb football coach who basically read us the textbook for a week rather than actually deal with the subject. Not really because of any squeamishness but mostly because it wasn't related to football. And that's all he cared about. I didn't know it was possible to make sex boring until I sat through that week of school. All of us were dozing off or just daydreaming. But the last day, someone raised their hand and said, "Hey coach, how do you have sex? What's the process?" Obviously, they were messing with a guy. The coach said, "Oh, well, okay, so you got a donut and a banana," and goes on to tell us about how that would work. It was so bizarre. In my 8th grade health class, a female teacher, about 50 and very obese, was asked what does butt sex feel like. She described it as taking a very large, slightly uncomfortable dump. So now every time I have a dump that feel like that I just think of butt sex. One of my friends said every time he takes a huge poo he looks at it, thinks about how it felt coming out, and he thinks to himself that's how much D I could take if I was gay. So I teach high school biology and there is the sex ed unit. The public school district I teach in a super conservative. So I did my lesson. No one asked questions. One boy came up to me and said he was uncut and he had some white stuff that smelled and what could he do to get rid of it. So I told him what it was, smegma, and he needed to ask his parents that procedure. Not a teacher, but in grade 7 we had a box where you could anonymously submit questions. 1 or 2 would be read at the end of class each day. My teacher pulled a question that read, "What are anal beads?" The whole class burst out laugh, including our teacher. and he just kinda threw away the piece of paper and said that we all clearly knew what anal beads were, but just in case they are sex toys. We were very promptly dismissed after that. I had a classmate who got a 0 on a health assignment because he wrote anal beads on his paper. Not a teacher, but heard 2 amazing questions. 5th grade sex ed student. Why does my mom scream during sex? Teacher. She's having fun. 10th grade safe sex education. Female student. If you're having anal sex and the guy comes inside you and then you fart, does it blow bubbles? Teacher. Next question. Had a classmate ask if he could use a water balloon as a condom. The point of a water balloon is to break and spill its contents. That is the exact opposite of the point of a condom. Next question. Not a teacher, but way back in grade 6 we had sex ed and the teacher had us write down questions on paper one day. She told us not to put our names because the next day we will be drawing the questions out of a hat to read aloud and then the teacher would answer them. So, the next day, and my turn comes up to draw a question. I pull the paper out of the hat and begin reading "Can women masturbate with a pillow between their legs?" signed a female classmate's name. Whoops, shouldn't have read that part. OMG, I'll never forget a question a girl asked in my sex ed class. Probably 7th grade. Girl, does pee ever come out instead of semen when a man ejaculates? Teacher, no, when a man ejaculates it is only semen. Girl, okay, but what if pee came out instead of semen? Teacher, that's not physically possible, as it's a separate system with urine versus semen. Girl, but what if it happened? Teacher, it can't happen. Girl, but what if it did? When I was in 6th or 7th grade, the school messed up and didn't pull a kid out of class whose parents had requested. They accidentally exposed a bunch of his parents' lies, among them being gay gives you AIDS, and masturbating causes cancer. His parents went nuts and pulled him out of public school after that. So I'm not a teacher. Yes as usual. But I talked with my biology teacher and she talked about her sex education with her students. They were all like 11-12 years old. So in the first sex lesson they were asked what they already know about sex and made a mind map on the board. They raised their hands and had to say anything related to sex, which was at the beginning normal stuff like condoms or pregnancy, etc. At one point one student said fisting and a girl asked what that is and he just straight said you take your whole fist and duck out really hard with it in the ass. Needless to say, the teacher had a talk with his parents about his porn consume lol. Not a sex ed teacher, but when I was in health we had a younger and fairly attractive female teacher. One of the guys in my class thought it would be funny to ask her favorite flavor of condom. She just smiled and said strawberry. None of us expected it. I'm not sure if the guy creamed himself from the mental image or wanted to die from embarrassment, but it was a great class.